videos in this mini-series, I'll show you how to create an advanced race system for your Roblox game. This system will prompt each player to join the race. The player with the most speed will win and be rewarded. This system is brilliant for any game which involves increasing player speed, such as a speed simulator. I will be assuming you have your own speed system before watching this video. Check out my speed simulator series if not. Before we start scripting, let's create everything we're going to need inside replicated storage, add a folder, and just rename it to race system. We'll come back to this folder later, but this is where we'll have all of our server and client events, module script, everything that will run on the server and the client. Everything else in this replicated storage you can ignore. This is just from my speed simulator game. You don't need to worry about any of this here. Now inside starter GUI, I'm going to add in a screen GUI, which I'm going to rename race GUI. Inside this GUI, I'm going to add in a frame, and this will sort of be the background frame. So I will call it background. I'm going to give it a nice blue color. I think 0, 110, 255 will be fairly nice. I'm actually going to position this manually. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I'd recommend playing around. It's only because I've already made a GUI that I sort of know how I want it all to look. So play around with it and get it how you like. But I'm going to do 0.361, 0.0670, and then for the size I'm going to do 0.2770 and 0.1580, and that is actually a bit too tall, so I'm just going to bring the height down a little bit. Now I'm going to add a UI corner into this just to sort of fancy it up a bit. I'm sort of going to speed through the GUI just because I'm assuming you know how to make it. If not, I do have a little mini series on GUI just going into the very basics of it. You can find the link to that series in the description. Now I'm going to add in a text button, and this text button will be our dismiss button. So dismiss button. I'm going to set the color to like a sort of salmon-y pink red color, 2558989, and I will change the position to 0.497, 0.430. Actually, I'm going to change the size first and then change the position because I do want to adjust it a little bit. I'll go 0.50, 0.570, and I'm going to lower it below the actual blue background here. And when we get rid of the buttons, we're still going to use this background to display how long's left of the current race. So if you've got the buttons, there's just going to be a massive gap below the text. And to make the text white, I'll make it say, make it Fredoka 1, that is sort of my favourite font at the minute, and just scale it up. Well, I'll probably set the size to 25 or maybe 30, 36, but you can use text scaled if you would like. In fact, I will use text scaled and that will look fine. There we go. I've just added another UI corner with a 0.30 corner radius on here. Just lower it, make sure it is below the UI. There we go. And now I'm going to duplicate this dismiss button and I will rename it to join button. I'm using BTN for short, same thing. And this join button, I'll make it a nice green color, so 80, 255, and 95. I will make the text say join, and I'm just going to position it next to the dismiss button, just like this. There we go. What I'm going to also do is go down to the text stroke transparency and change it to 0 on both the dismiss button and the join button, just so the text stand out a little bit more. Now inside the background again, we want to add a text label. I'll rename this to header, and this will basically say how long until the race starts. It won't be our timer, but it will say the race is starting in blah blah blah. So this text, I'll make the background transparency 1, position be 0.2230, and the size I'll make 0.2230, and that is a little bit too small, so I'll go a little bit bigger on that. I'll just make the text say race starting in. I'll make the text white and I'll scale it up again. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is duplicate this header, rename it to timer, and this will be our timer text. So we can drag it down and this will take up the remaining area. And this will just be our timer. So for now, I'll just say 1 minute 59. I don't know how long our timer will be. I'll just make it 1 minute 59. There we go. So once you're happy with how your GUI looks, we can grab the race GUI and place it inside of our race system in replicated storage. And we will come back to this another time. What we will basically do is duplicate this race system and put it inside of each player. But we're going to do that through script. So under server script service, let's add a script, which I'm going to rename race system. This is where we'll handle most of the system. Ignore all the other scripts I've got in this project. Again, that is just from my speed simulator. I've got a data store, I've got a method to increase speed. Leader stats, which will be important. So the leader stat that I've got is gems here. Just an int value named gems. And so when the player completes the race, first place is going to get 500 gems, second will get 250, and third place will get 100 gems. So that is, maybe you might want to add that. Obviously, if you have your own currency, you want to increase that. So first we need to get the replicated storage service, and we'll store it in a variable for easy access. So replicated storage is game::get service replicated storage, just like this. And we'll also do the same for the player service. So players is game::get service players. It's always good practice to get services right at the top of your script, just so you can access them wherever you need them. Next, let's get our race system folder in replicated storage, because we are going to access that a lot. So race system is replicated storage: wait for child race system. So this will wait for the race system folder to exist. Now let's get the race GUI, because we're going to want to spawn that inside of each player. So I'll just say race GUI is race system: wait for child race GUI. And again, just waiting for the race GUI to exist. Now we're going to need to create two more variables for the GUI. GUI shown, which will be a boolean, by default will be set to false. And this just tells the script, has the GUI been shown to each player yet or not? If it's true, it has. If it's false, it hasn't. We will come back to this in just a minute and you'll see why it's important. We'll also create a GUI clones, and this will be equal to an empty table. And what we will do is when we create a GUI clone, we will put each clone inside this table so we can easily remove them from the player later on. Alright, now at the bottom of the script, every second, so we're going to do a while wait one do loop. So every second we're going to worry about handling stuff related to the game. It makes sense because if our timer is going to tick down every second, it makes sense to do everything else every second as well. We don't want to do it loads because we don't want to slow the server down. Just every second, all we're going to do is check if the GUI has been shown. If it hasn't, we're going to show it. That's it for now. While wait one do, if GUI shown is false, then, so if the GUI has not been shown, we'll set GUI shown to true, because we are now showing the GUI, and then we're going to call a new function called spawn GUI, which we'll create in just a second, and this will show the GUI. So just to recap this again, every second we're going to check if the GUI has been shown. If it hasn't, then we're going to set the variable to true so it doesn't run this check anymore, and then we'll spawn the GUI in. You're probably thinking this is quite inefficient, why are we checking this every second? It makes sense just to check it once and then maybe have its own function. Well, the reason for this is because later on we are going to be using this for a lot more than just checking the GUI. We're going to be handling all our timers. I think we'll have 3 different timers, and we'll be handling it all within here. There won't be so much that is going to be really demanding, but we're just going to keep all the necessary stuff, and it will be a bit longer than this. So it's just best practice to get it in early, because we will be moving it here anyway in the future, so it makes sense just to do it right from the start. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let's create our spawn GUI function. So any code has to be above the while wait loop. If it's below the loop, so say we had some code down here, this will not run because this will be looping forever. This will never stop looping unless we break out of it. So this code will never run. So any functions, any code has to go above the while wait loop. So just above it, I'm going to say function spawn GUI. And in here, we need to loop through every single player in the game, clone the GUI, put the clone inside the player GUI, and then add it to the table. It's a lot easier to do than it sounds. For underscore, from a player, in pairs, players, :get players. Do. Just like this. So this will loop through every single player in the game. Underscore we don't need, it's just the index in the table of the player we're currently looking at. And player is the current player. So get players will just return a table of all the players in the game. So this will just loop through every single player, and player is the current player we're looking at in the loop. Local GUI clone equals race GUI : clone. So this creates a copy of the GUI. Now we need to set the parent of this copy to the player GUI. So we need to basically put the copy inside the player's GUI so they can see it. GUI clone, not clones, but clone, because remember clones is our table. We just want the clone, the singular clone. Dot parent equals player dot player GUI. And this will put it inside each player's player GUI, which is where their GUI is displayed to them. And then we need to insert it and add it to the clone table. So table.insert, and then we want the table to add it to, which is GUI clones, and we're going to insert the GUI clone. So the table to insert it into, and the item we want to insert. So this should now work, hopefully. The only other thing I'm going to do is just add a wait 10 seconds here. And the reason for this is because when I test it on a local server, which you'll see in a minute, it's going to take a little while between the client's loading and the server loading. If we just hit test and play, this will do it instantly. But I want to test this with 2 players at the same time, just to make sure the GUI does show for everyone. And so when I test it with a server, the server will load before the clients do. So just waiting 10, just make sure everything has time to load in. If you're loading, the more players you're loading or the slower your machine is, you want to increase this. If it's going to take if you know it takes 2 minutes for your Roblox Studio to load, I would maybe make this 3 or 4 minutes, just to guarantee that everything's loaded. Otherwise, nothing will work. So I'm just going to add wait 10 for safety. If we now hit test, I've got local server here, 2 players, and hit start. And once you've hit start, you'll get 2 players loading up, 2 clients, and you'll also get a server tab. We're not interested in that too much, but that is where you'll find your errors. So I'll just do a quick guide through this. As we can see, the GUI has popped up on both players' screen, which is perfect. So that's exactly what we want. So we know it's working. What we can do is go to view and hit output, which is this little like terminal button here with the arrow. We hit that, we get the output on the client. So if nothing's working, if it's not working for you, click the output, go in this output window and look for any red errors. This is unrelated, clear that. Look for any red errors. If you don't have any, nothing's wrong on the client. Try it on the other client. Again, nothing important here. It must all be working. If it's still not working and you've got no errors on the client, go into your server window, which is this one just here. It's got this sort of green border around the game, and it will also say pause physics or stuff like that. This is the server. Again, enable the output and check if you've got any red errors. You're more likely to have red errors in the server output than the client outputs, because we've only done server code. So it wouldn't make too much sense to have any client errors, but worth checking everything. If you've got no red errors, then just make sure that all your code matches mine perfectly, because it's going to be quite advanced. So it's just one of those where you've got to follow along very carefully. Click on the race GUI we made, so under race system. Click on that, make sure under view you've got the properties window enabled just here, and turn off reset on spawn. We want to disable that. This will stop the GUI disappearing when the player dies. Now inside our race system folder, we want to add a remote event. Right click and rename this and call it dismiss. We'll use this to tell the server that a player does not want to join the race. In the same location, add a module script and rename it to race module. Open this up. So if you're not too familiar with a module script, basically it's a script that can be accessed by both server and client scripts, and it's sort of think of it as a middle point, a sort of accessing point for server and client to communicate. So we're going to rename the module to race module, and because we've done that, we need to return race module. We just need to update that. And in this table here, the race module table, we're going to create a timer variable, and by default we'll set it to 0. And this will create our timer. This will be the time until the next race. And we also need to create a function. So just below this table here, for the return statement, we'll say function race module dot start timer. This is how you'll create a timer on a module. We can say race module dot timer equals 30, and this will set the initial length of the timer in seconds. So this is the length of the timer in seconds. So obviously if you don't want 30 seconds, you would do 60, whatever you want. It can be anything. But this is the time the players have to decide if they want to join the race or not. Now we'll count this down. So while this race module.timer is greater than 0, we want to count it down. Do wait 1 second. race module dot timer minus equals 1. If the timer is above 0, we want to decrease it by 1 every second to show that timer actually decreasing. Now we can actually close this module script back into service, our race system, which I've got disabled here because I was doing some testing. In our race system script here, we need to handle any server-side functionality. First thing we need to do after the race GUI, we need to get our module script and our dismiss remote event that we created. So I'll say dismiss RE for remote event equals race system wait for child dismiss, and this will wait for the dismiss remote event to exist. And I'll also say module equals require race system wait for child race module, and this will get the module script. Whenever we get a module script, we have to use this require keyword here, required method, and this will load up our module script so we can access everything inside of it. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is update our GUI timer. So we want the timer labeled texts to tick down every single second, and we want to format it in terms of minutes, seconds, or you can just format it as seconds, it's up to you, but I'm going to do minutes, seconds, because we will be using that for the race itself. So let's do this in a function. So let's drop down after our spawn GUI and say function update GUI timer. In here, we can say for I, v in pairs, similar to this players, into the players we did up here. We can say GUI clones do, and this will go through each clone in GUI clones. So next we can say if v find first child background, then, so if the background exists, which it should do, but it's just good to have these checks in place, because if we go to replicated storage, our race system, the race GUI, background here, so when you're doing find first child background, rename background to whatever the name of this frame is. If you've named it something else, like race background, this will be race background. You want to name this exactly, capitalization perfectly correct, what is under the race GUI. And now we just need to update the text. So we can say v.background.timer.text equals string.format. And now this is going to look a bit confusing. What I'll do is I'll just write it out and I'll explain it after. So bear with me a second. Percentage 02i colon percentage 02i. And we need to put this in a string as well, so put the quotation marks around it, comma, module.timer /60, comma, module.timer percentage 60. And this looks quite confusing. Let me just zoom out a little bit here so you can see it a bit easier. So this updates the timer text and it formats it in minutes, seconds. So we're going to have, say, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Mine will just be 30 seconds, so it'll be 0 minutes, 30 seconds. If you just want to do seconds, you'd just do that. That'd be, and then you'd get rid of this here. So this would be 30 seconds. But think of it as minutes, seconds, minutes, seconds. And if you did hours, you'd just do this again. So you'd have, your race wouldn't be an hour, but if it was, for example, you'd have another one of these. So you'd have hour, minutes, seconds, and then you'd have module.timer. I think you'd have /3600 for hours, /60 for minutes. Off the top of my head, it's something like that, because you'd square the 60. So that's all that does, is it just formats it. The percentage 02i, so 02. So I means that we are putting a number into the string. It's the format specifier for a number. The percentage just means that we're using a format specifier. So anything after the comma will be replaced with the I here and the percentage. So if we had 10 instead of module.timer /60, this percentage 02i would be replaced with 10. It's just an easy way of putting numbers and variables into your strings without hard typing them in. The 02 just means how many digits we're going to display. So we're going to display 2 digits because it only goes up to 60 seconds. We're not going to, have 100 seconds. So if we had 3 digits, it'd be 03, which would display as 060. We only need 030, sorry, but we only need 30. So we can just do 02. So it's only going to display 2 digits. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Next, we'll do the dismiss remote event. I know we've not fired this yet, but we may as well get it out the way now. So this remote event will close the player that dismissed the race it'll close their GUI. So we can say dismiss remote event, the on server event :connect function. We need the player and we need their GUI. So we can say local index equals table.find GUI clones and the GUI. So what this is doing is we're looking for the GUI, the player's GUI that's dismissed the race, and we're finding its position, hence the index. We're finding its position inside of the GUI clones table. If the GUI does exist within that table, so if index then, if it doesn't exist, index will just be null or nil, then we need to remove it. So table.remove, and we'll remove them from not decided, which is a table we haven't made yet. We'll make it in just a second. And table.find, not decided, player. And table.remove, GUI clones, index. Just like so, and then we'll destroy their GUI :destroy. So I know we haven't made this not decided yet, so it looks a bit confusing. Let's go make that now. So at the top, just under our GUI clones, I'll say not decided equals and an empty table. And this will be a table of all the players that haven't decided. So they either haven't joined the race or haven't dismissed it yet. They're waiting, the server is waiting on their result. And that is sort of why we are calling this in the first place, because we need to remove the player's GUI and the player from these two tables. So that is why we have to dismiss it on the server anyway. And of course, we are now looking, if you see here, we're looking to find the player inside the not decided table. So we can sort of guess that this not decided table, rather than being a table of GUIs, is going to be a table of players. So we need to add the player to this table. But when would we do that? Well, the best place to do that would be in the spawn GUI. So when we're spawning all the GUI inside the player, we may as well do table.insert not decided and the player, because we want to add the player to that table, and that's the perfect place to do that. Now we are nearly done with this script. We have two more things to do. I'm just going to change and improve our while wait function. Now I did say I'd be building on this. So every second we want to check if the module timer is greater than 0. So if module.timer is greater than 0, then if that timer is greater than 0, then we will check if the GUI is shown. So let me cut that and paste that in there. And once all the GUI is spawned in, every second we'll call the update GUI timer function, and this will update the GUI timer every second. Now we have done a lot, so it is worth now just testing. So if I hit test and play, nothing's going to happen. And the reason for that is because we need to start the timer. We haven't actually called the start timer function yet. Now if we just did module.startTimer like this, it's not going to work. And the reason for that is because we're calling this function on the module, what it's going to do is, obviously that function has a while loop in it. So it's going to do that while, if I just open it up, it's going to run this code all the time until that timer is less than or equal to 0. So until it breaks out of this while loop. So for 30 seconds, it's going to be running this, but it's going to pause this script while that's running. So that means none of this while wait is going to run until this timer has reached 0, which is no good. We want them to both run simultaneously. The best way of doing that is probably coroutines. So coroutine just basically allows you to call another function or run another bit of code at the same time as another bit of code. So we can run this script at the same time as running the start timer function by using a coroutine. So to do that, we can say local start timer equals coroutine.create module.startTimer. Now we don't need the open and close parentheses after this, we just need the name of the function, and it needs to be the name exactly. So you can see my start timer has a lowercase s, capital T. Make sure you got that exact same. You can just go and copy this and paste it in here just to be sure. And now that's created a coroutine to call the start timer function while still running this script simultaneously. We can now say coroutine.resume start timer to start the coroutine. And now if we hit test and play, once my 10 seconds is up, because if you remember I added that 10 seconds to test it on a local server. So once this 10 seconds is up, we'll see what happens. There we go, the GUI appears, and the text is updating. Our buttons still don't do anything, but we're going to fix that in just a second. Let's see what happens when it gets down to 0 seconds. The timer should stop, and it will just stop at 0. Let's have a look. Here we go. So 3, 2, 1. Perfect. So it gets to 1 second, sorry, and it stopped. So the reason it stops at 1 is because it's got this greater than 0 again. So it's going to get to 1. Then the timer is obviously greater than 1, so we're going to wait 1 second, remove it. So the timer is now 0. Now we go back to here, and because this timer is greater than 0, but the timer itself is 0, but we're checking if it's greater than 0, this isn't going to run this update timer here. We don't want to change this to greater than or equal to 0, because at 0 seconds we're not going to want to run the functionality we're going to add, but it won't be a problem because this runs every second anyway. When this timer gets to 0, soon we're going to implement the features required to actually start the race. So once they're implemented, the 1 second won't matter because it's going to do it anyway. You're not going to see it get to 0, but it's going to wait a second, then teleport everyone. Or then start the race even. Now we can close both of these scripts up. And finally, we need to make our buttons work. So let's find the join button in our race GUI, just here. Add a local script inside of it. In this local script, I'm going to say local players equals game::get service players. And local player, or PLR I'm going to use for short, is players.localPlayer. We'll also get the buttons, so local button is script.parent, because the parent of the script is the join button. So this will get the button for easy access. We can then say button.mouseButton one click, which is left click, :connect function. And left click will also call if the button's touched on mobile. Button.parent.dismiss button. So we want to get the button, which is the join button. The parent is the background, and then we want the dismiss button, which is button.parent. So the background.dismiss button. :destroy. So we want to remove it from the player. And then we'll also say button::destroy straight after this. And this will destroy the two buttons. Because if they if they join the game, we want to still keep the rest of it with the timer, because the timer is going to change to the race text when the race starts. You'll see what I mean. So we want to keep that. We will also teleport the players here, or call a remote event to teleport the players anyway. But for now, this will do. We can close this up. Do the same in the dismiss button, so add a local script. And in here, we need local replicated storage equals game::get service replicated storage. And we also need the race system, so local race system is replicate storage, :wait for child race system. And we also need the dismiss remote event, because we're going to fire that from here. So local dismiss re equals race system, :wait for child dismiss. Finally, we get our GUI components. I don't want a function here. We get our GUI components, local button is script.parent, and the local GUI, because we need the GUI, is button.parent. So the button is the script.parent, is the dismiss button, the parent of that is the background, and the parent of that is the GUI. Now we can say button.mouseButton one click, :connect function, dismiss re :fire server, passing in the GUI. Because if you remember, inside of our race system script, when we call the dismiss remote event, we take the GUI, we have a parameter here for the GUI. We also have one for the player. The player is automatically passed through, so we don't need to worry about it. Whenever we fire the server from the client, the player is automatically passed through as an argument. So we don't need to add player. If we added player here, we'd get an error. Just leave it out. We only need to pass the GUI in, which is the GUI we're going to destroy. That is it. So now let's test the GUI. So I'm going to do another local server with 2 players. Alright, so the timers have both appeared. Let me just clear this out. I just want the output of it visible. So for player 2, which is what I'm using here, I'm going to click join and the buttons disappear. And for player 1, I'm going to hit dismiss and the whole thing disappears. So that is working perfectly. And now when the timer reaches 1, it will just stop, as we've already tested, but it won't be visible to this player. So it stops at 1, and that's it. Perfect, it's working. So let's create a race map. I'm just going to add a new part in here and just bring it over to the side a bit. And I'll make this the size I want. What I'll do first is just design the sort of base plate, and then we'll go from there. Make it fairly long, and I'll make it a nice green colour. And what I'm going to do, just a bit of modelling skills now. I'm going to get back to you once I've made the briefed base plate, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. There we go, so I've just made a very brief base plate here, so it's just got some walls. Basically, I've copied this over here. And it's quite short, obviously, if you're making a long race, you're going to want it to probably be a bit longer than this. But I don't want to spend too much time on it. What I'm going to do now is also make a starting line and a finish line. So just bring a part in here. And I want to go to model, and I'm going to turn move off here. Make sure that's off. Just flatten it a little bit. Maybe make it a bit wide. I'm going to make it 3.5. Well, that'll be alright. Just like that. And now I want it to be the length. It can go into the walls, that's fine. I just want it to be the length of this. This is going to be the starting line. So this is like a visible marker for the players, an indicator to where the race starts, and then we're going to do a finish line as well. So I'll make this a darker green. If I select this colour and just go a bit darker, like this, and now if I duplicate this, grab my move tool and bring it over here, we'll make the finish line, which will be about here. For some reason it's moved itself over a bit. Has it done it on this one? No. That's just because it's a bit rotated, that's all. Okay. Now I'll make this a darker colour. I'll probably go for a dark grey to indicate the finish line. And you can see that I've grouped my base plate here, my little terrain, and I've made a group called terrain. This just has all the parts in it which make up the walls and the floor. What I'm going to do now is grab my start line, rename this, and I will just call it start line. And same with the finish line. If I select that, right click, rename it, and I'll call this finish line. Now we need to make some obstacles, just something that's sort of in the way so the race is a bit more interesting. So I'll do that quickly and I'll get back to you. There we go, so now you can see I've got some obstacles. They're just wedges and parts, just something to make it a bit more interesting. And what I've also done is group them as a folder named obstacles. This just allows us to still individually select them, but they are still grouped in the workspace. I'm also going to grab the start line and just duplicate it. And what I'm going to do is make the transparency, I'll keep it 0 for now, scale it, and I'm just going to make this basically an invisible wall. This will stop all the players running through before the race has started. So you want to make this much larger than the actual area of the race, just to make sure players really can't get through. And this will just stop them before the race starts. This will sort of keep them at the finish line. If we now make this invisible, and I'll rename this to, I'll just call it wall. I'll also duplicate the finish line here, and this will become finish area. And this will just be the area the player has to touch. Because the finish line is so small, they risk, and if they're going really quick, they risk just running straight through it and a touch event not actually running. So if we make this, if we make a finish area, which is quite large, if the player touches anywhere within this area, which they probably will, then they'll finish the race. Now let's make this transparency 1. I'm going to turn can collide off for the finish area. Keep it on for the wall, but for the finish area, we want to turn can collide off. Now let's select the finish line, the finish area, the start line, the wall, the obstacles, and the terrain. So absolutely everything. Right click this and group it as a folder. And I'll rename this to map. Now the last thing we need to do, which I've just already done, is make some spawn parts. But I'll show you how to do it. So I've got a model here called spawn parts. Let me move that to the side. Basically what you want to do is these are the parts that the players can spawn on when they teleport to the race. Add a part in, just resize it, bring it down a bit, move it over to where you want it. Make the transparency 1, anchor it, can collide off. Duplicate it and just put one wherever you want a spawn part. So these are just parts that the players will spawn at. You don't want them to all spawn at the same part, or they're just going to stack on top of each other. Just sort of jot these around, and then you can grab all of these, right click and group these as a model, which is what I've done. Let me just delete these. That's what I've done with these spawn parts here. So as you can see here, I've got 20 spawn parts, and it's all just parts just like how I've shown you, and also drag that into our map. The last thing to do is anchor everything. So open up your obstacles folder and select all your obstacles, make sure they're anchored. Open up the spawn parts, select all the spawn parts, make sure they're anchored, and open up the terrain, select all the terrain, make sure it's anchored, and the finish area, the finish line, the start line, and the wall, make sure they're all anchored too. Now we can close up this map, go into server storage and add it to server storage. You want to add a new folder into server storage, which I've already done, just called race here. It's got nothing in it, and just drag the map into this race folder. That's because we're going to have multiple races in the future. We're going to make three different race maps, and it will randomly select one. So that is sort of future-proofing for that. Now that we've created the physical race, go into the race folder that we created in our replicated storage, our race system. Add a new remote event, and we'll rename this remote event to teleport player. Now open the join button in the race GUI, and open the local script, and we just need to add a couple lines of code. So this teleport player remote event will teleport the player. We're going to teleport the player on the server, because if we do it locally, only the player is going to teleport on the machine. As far as the server's aware, the player is still on the map. It's a bit confusing to wrap your head around that one, but other players will still see them on the map, whereas they'll see themselves on the race. So we want to teleport them on the server, not the client. That's why we're using a remote event. So local replicated storage is game:get service replicated storage. Local race system is replicated storage wait for child race system, and local teleport player RE, or for remote event, is race system wait for child teleport player. So again, very similar to what we've done previously with this waiting for child race system and then getting the remote event. This is very similar to our server script. Local player, we're going to leave that the same, and the button, the only other bit we're going to add is when we click the button, before we destroy any of the GUI, just before that we'll say teleport player fire server. Because the player is passed automatically, we don't need to put anything in these brackets here, because we are going to access the player and teleport the player, but we don't need to pass anything in, as you'll see shortly when we do the on server event, because the player is automatically passed through. Now let's close this local script, and inside the race system script, which is under server script service here, let's teleport the player to the race. So let's start with variables. So we're going to need a server storage variable, because we've got the map inside server storage. So server storage is game:get service server storage. We also need to add a new remote event. So just above this dismiss RE, I'll add a teleport player RE is race system wait for child teleport player. And we also now need to get the race folder and the race map. So race folder is server storage wait for child race, and race map is race folder wait for child map. Now just above this dismiss remote event, let's add the teleport player remote event. So teleport player re.onServer event :connect function, and we take the player as a parameter, but again we're not passing the player into the call in the local script. If you remember, if I open this up, we're not passing the player in, but we're taking the player as a parameter. That is because when you go from a client to a server, the player is automatically passed through. So in here, we need to check if the player's character exists. So if player.character then, and then we need to check if their humanoid root part exists. So local HRP is player.character wait for child find first child, find first child humanoid root part. Spelled exactly like this, uppercase H, uppercase R, uppercase P. If you spell this wrong, it's not going to work. So make sure this is spelled correctly. You won't get an error either, so make sure this is spelt correctly. We can then say if HRP, which stands for humanoid root part, then, and what this has done is just 2 layers of protection, because we're going to teleport the player using their humanoid root part. So if we don't run these checks, if we don't check if the player has a character, and we don't check if the player has a humanoid root part, then we're going to get an error. And now let's get all the spawns in the map. So local spawns is map, or race map, .spawn parts, get children. So this will get all the spawns. Now we need to choose a random spawn. So local index is math.random 1 and the number of spawns. So hashtag spawns, that just means the number of spawns. So this will choose a random number between 1 and the number of spawns. And then we can just teleport the player to whatever that random spawn is. So hrp.cframe, uppercase C, uppercase F, spell it exactly like that, equals spawns index in square brackets .cframe plus vector3 .new 0 2 0. So this will teleport the player to the spawn pad that we randomly select, and spawn them 2 studs above it. If we do zeros, if we don't add this, we might spawn inside of it in the floor and we could glitch out. So adding that extra 2 studs in the Y direction just allows them to sort of fall on top of it. Now we need to remove the player from the not decided table because they're no longer not decided. They actually have made a decision now and they've joined the game. We can say if table.find not decided, comma player, then table.remove not decided, comma table.find not decided, comma player. Now we've got this table.find not decided player twice. So let's create that variable. Local table index equals table.find not decided, comma player. And then we can just say if table index, then table.remove not decided, table index. And that is our teleport player server event. So we're selecting a random map, teleporting the player, and then removing them from the not decided table. And the table.find just finds the index of the player inside of the not decided table. If it doesn't exist, then the table index will be set to nil, and this if statement won't run. We've got to check if it exists within the table first. For whatever reason, it might not. If it does exist within the table, remove them from the table. Now, in our while wait one do, before the if GUI shown, we just need to put the map into the workspace if it doesn't already exist in the workspace. If racemap.parent is the race folder, then, so if the parent of the race map, so let's have a look, so server storage, so the race map is this map here. If the parent, which is the map, is the race folder, sorry. If the parent is the race folder, then we know it's not been put into the workspace. So we can just say racemap.parent equals workspace. And this will put the map into the workspace if it hasn't already been put in the workspace. Test this out. So let's hit test and play. We only need to test with 1 player. So we'll wait 10 seconds for the prompt. And as soon as the prompt appears, the map should spawn. There we go. And it does. And if I hit join, and it teleports us over. Perfect. So it's all working perfectly fine. We need to create a bindable event inside of our race system folder in replicated storage. Such bindable event, add one of them, and I'm going to rename it to start race. Duplicate this, right click duplicate, and rename the duplicated bindable event to finish race. The reason we're using bindable events is because we're going to call these on the server and then do work on the server. And because it's server to server, we need a bindable, not remote. Remote is for server to client or client to server, whereas bindable is for the same type of device, whether that be server to server or client to client. Now let's open our race module, and we need to add a new timer and a new function. So let's add an in progress timer. In progress timer equals 0. And this will create a timer. This is the time remaining of the race. So when the timer begins, let's say the race will be 2 minutes long. After 2 minutes, that timer will go, and then the race will be over. So this is the length of the race. Now below our start timer, let's add a new function. Race module dot, and this one will be race in progress. In here, we'll set it'll be quite similar. Let's just copy this over. And rather than setting the timer, we're going to do race module.inProgress timer, and we're going to set the initial length of the timer in seconds. So I'll make the race 1 minute long, 60 seconds. And while the race module.inProgress timer is greater than 0, decrease the inProgress timer. So it's very similar to the start timer function here, just for the inProgress timer. And now, when this timer gets to 0, we need to finish the race. So local finish race bindable event, or BE, equals race system, wait for child, finish race. Right at the top, above our race module table, we need to get our replicated storage. Local replicated storage is game, get service, replicated storage, and we need our race system as well. Local race system is replicated storage, wait for child, race system. And now we've got this race system. It doesn't give us an error anymore, and it does now exist. Now we can close that, and let's open our race system script and implement this new timer into our server-side logic. First, let's get our bindable event. So under our dismiss remote event variable, we'll get start race bindable event is equal to race system, wait for child, start race, and finish race, BE is race system, wait for child, finish race. And below our not decided table, we're going to create a new table named finished players. And this will be an empty table. And this will represent a table of players that have finished the race. Now below our spawn GUI, we need to create a destroy GUI function. So function destroy GUI. And in here, we're going to need a parameter, remove all. And this will be a Boolean variable. So let me briefly explain what this is going to do. If remove all is true, we're going to remove every single player's GUI race prompt. So you know the race prompt that we've made, we're going to remove it from every single player that has one if remove all is true. If remove all is false, we're just going to remove it from the players that haven't joined the race. So this is basically a way of removing the prompt, the race prompt, from all the players that don't decide. And you'll see why our not decided table comes into play now. Because if they don't click dismiss or join, when the 30 seconds runs out for them to join the race, their GUI is still going to be there, but the race will be started. So we want to remove that from all the players that haven't yet decided. That's why we've got this remove all. So if that's true, we'll just remove it from everyone, which we'll do at the end of a race, for example. But if it's false, we're going to remove it from just the players, that haven't decided. So if remove all is false, then we need to loop through each player in the not decided table and remove their GUI. So for I, v in pairs, not decided, do, and then we need to get the index of their race GUI in the table, in the GUI clones table. So local index is table.find GUI clones, v.player GUI .race GUI. And now this is very specific, okay? So let's look at our race system. So V will be the player. .player GUI must be spelled exactly like this. Uppercase P, uppercase G, just like this. And that is because each player has a player GUI inside of them, which displays the GUI to the player. If you do not spell this correctly, it will not work. As you can see here, when we set the clone, we're setting it to the player's GUI. Same thing here, v.player GUI. The race GUI, .race GUI, so this must be spelled exactly the same name as race GUI here. So this must match this. We then say if index then, so if the player's GUI exists within that table, we want to remove them from the not decided table. So table.remove, not decided, table.find, not decided, v. So this removes the player from the not decided table. Remove their GUI from the GUI clone table, GUI clones, index, and destroy the GUI, v.player GUI, .race GUI, destroy. And then after this for loop, we'll loop through each clone in the GUI clones. For I, v in pairs, GUI clones, do, v dot, and this one's very specific again. So now we're looking, v is the race GUI, dot background, open up the background, dot header, dot text. So we want to change the text of the header because that is essentially our race starting in text. So when the race begins, we want to change it from race starting in to race ending in. So we can just set that to race ending in, and then we'll also manage the timer shortly as well. Okay, and now let's go backspace it a bit and get an else statement in. So if remove all and then else. So here we'll just remove every player's GUI. We're only going to do this when the race is finished, because once the race is done, we don't want to show the GUI to anyone anymore. So loop through each clone in the GUI clones. For IV in pairs, GUI clones, do v : destroy. And after this, we can just say GUI clones equals and a new empty table, just to completely reset the table. And that's this done. A lot of tables, a bit confusing, but as long as it looks like this, it's going to be good. Now in our update GUI timer, we need to make some changes. Let's add a parameter, race in progress, and this will be another Boolean. If it's false, then we're going to do this here, update the timer text. So if race in progress is false, then get all this, copy it, paste it in here, and we can delete that. So we just put it into here. Otherwise, so else, Copy this again, paste it in, but the difference is this time, rather than module.timer, we're going to do module.inProgressTimer for both of these, in progress timer. And this must be spelled exactly how you spelt it in the race module. So here I've got lowercase I, capital P, capital T. And here I've got lowercase I, capital P, capital T. Otherwise it will not work. Now we need to add our start race and finish race bindable events. So start, just after our dismiss remote event, we'll get start race BE dot event, connect, function. And first thing we're going to do, when we start the race, we want to remove the GUI from each player that's not in the race. So how do we do that? Well, we know it's going to be our destroy GUI. And if we don't want to remove it from every player, but just the players that didn't join the race, didn't decide, we're going to pass in false. Because if we look back, remove all, if it's false, we're just going to remove it from the players that haven't decided. After that, we can say local race in progress equals, this will be equal to coroutine.create our module.raceInProgress function. So this will create a coroutine to call the race in progress function while still running this script simultaneously. And then coroutine.resume race in progress. And this will start the coroutine. So this will start our race in progress for the race. So the race timer will start counting down, not the timer till the race, but the actual race timer. And then we need to get the wall. If you remember, we created this under our map. We created a part named wall, which stops the players from walking beyond the start line. So we'll get local wall equals race map, wait for child, wall. And then wall.canCollide equals false. And this will allow the players to walk through the wall. Now let's create our finish race. So finish race BE.event connect function. First of all, we want to destroy the GUI for every player now, because once the race has been finished, we're going to destroy it for everyone. So destroy GUI true, and we need to put the race back in server storage. Race map.parent equals server storage dot race. Now we are getting there. I know this is a lot of code. This video is a lot of code. We now need to create a function that is called when the player hits the finish area. If you remember, we also made this finish area. So it basically covers all the area that if a player touches, it will be classed as finishing the race. So we'll say race map dot finish area dot touched connect function hit. So this is called every time the finish area is touched, and hit is the part that touched it. So we need to check if the hit has a parent. If hit.parent then. So let's say the player's right leg touched the finish area. The parent of that will be the player's character, and that's what we're interested in. So local player is players, get player from character, hit.parent. If player then, so if the player exists, then we need to look for the player in the finished players table. If table.find finished players, player, then return. Don't do anything if the player has already finished, basically. If the player's already finished the race, we don't want to add them to the finished players again. This could happen because there could be a slight, it might take, say, half a second to teleport the player, so then maybe this function gets called 10 times while they're in that area. So we don't want to add them to the table 10 times. It's just sort of a, think of it as a debounce. And below this, we can add them to the finished players table if they're not already in it. So table.insert finished players, adding in the player. And then we need to teleport the player back to the main area. So if player.character, then we don't really need to do this because we've checked it up there. But if they died at the exact instance that we run this code, then it wouldn't work if we don't add this check. So it's just a little extra safety precaution. If player.character then, local HRP, which stands for humanoid root part, is player.character, find first child, humanoid root part, spelled exactly like this, uppercase H, uppercase R, uppercase P. If HRP, then, so the reason we do HRP is because the humanoid root part is the center of each player's character. If you teleport the humanoid root part, the entire player will teleport. So the humanoid root part is always the part you want to move around. Now we need to get all the spawns in our game. So these are the spawns that the player will get teleported back to after the race. So in my workspace here, I have an island 1. In here, I've got a spawns group, which has loads of spawn locations. Obviously, everyone's spawns are going to be under different names, but mine are under workspace, island 1, spawns. So I can say local spawns equals workspace dot island 1 dot spawns colon get children. And this will get all the spawns. Now I can choose a random spawn. Local index is math.random between 1, the number of spawns, so hashtag spawns, and this will choose a number between 1 and the number of spawns. Then we can teleport the humanoid root part to that spawn. hrp.cframe equals spawns index.cframe plus vector3.new 0 to 0. Very similar to our teleporting to the map spawns, the race map spawns. If you only have one spawn in your main game, you wouldn't do this math.random, you just teleport them to that spawn, and obviously change this to the location of your spawn. Don't just do this, because that will probably be wrong, unless you have the same layout as me. Now we need to go into our while wait 1 do. So now in our update GUI timer, we need to change this to false, because if you remember, we added a race in progress parameter here, and so we need to pass in true or false. So make sure you add false here, and then we'll add an else to the if time is greater than 0. If we're not counting down the module timer, we're going to be counting down the race timer. So we can say update GUI timer true, and that's it. Now let's test it. So let's close this up, test and play. I'm only going to test it with one person because we don't need to test it on a local server now. Just wait for the pop-up. It will take 10 seconds. There we go. I'm going to hit join. We get teleported over, and then when this timer runs out, I should start running. I should be able to go through this wall, reach the end, and when I touch the end, I'll be teleported back to our main area. And then once the race completely finishes, I should be able, the GUI should just completely disappear. Let's give it a go. Here we go. So 3, 2, 1 now. So let's go. So the wall, so it's not worked. So something isn't working correctly. Let's have a look at what that could be. Okay, so the reason for this is because I didn't actually finish with the race module. I'm not sure why. I just completely did not finish with the race module script. So let's fix this up. So after we've got the finish race bindable event, we'll just say finish race bindable event colon fire. And at the top, in our start timer function, we need to begin the race. So local start race BE equals race system colon wait for child start race. And start race BE colon fire. Now if we test it again, it should work. So I hit join, get teleported, and I wait for this timer to run out, and hopefully I'll be able to run through this wall this time. Right, 3, 2, 1, and okay, now we go. So now it says race ending in. We've got the 60-second countdown. If I get to the finish area, it teleports me back, and I'll wait for this race ending to finish, and hopefully it should just disappear. Here we go. So 3, 2, 1. You can see our map disappears back into server storage, and our GUI has disappeared as well. It's all working perfectly, so that's great. In starter GUI, add a new screen GUI. I'm going to rename this to win GUI. Let's design the interface that will appear to display the top 3 winners. I want to display each player's avatar, so let's add 3 image labels for first, second, and third place. So let's start with first, so let's add an image label. I'll rename this just to first. And let me size and position it. So the size I'm going to set to 0.108, 0, 0.203, 0. So that should be 4 separate numbers, all separated with a comma. And same with the position, 4 separate numbers with a comma. But I'm going to do 0.445, 0, 0.118, and 0. These are just sizes I've played around with beforehand. And next, I'm just going to add a text label into this first. And this will literally just say first. So the size is going to be 10, 0.20. And the position is going to be 00, 0.7960. So it's just a sort of on the bottom here. I'm going to make the background transparency 1. I'll make the text say first. I'm going to make the color a goldish color. And I'm going to make the text stroke transparency 0, just so we can see it a bit easier. I'm also going to go and set the size of this text to something a bit larger. Actually, I'm just going to scale it. That's probably the easiest way. So if I just find text scaled, turn that on, and now the text is scaled up. Now I'm going to duplicate this and rename this duplicated image label to second. I'm going to change the size and position. So the new size will be 0.0930, 0.1740. Just so it's a little bit smaller because it's a tiny bit less significant. The position will be 0.339, 0.0840, and I'll change the text to say second, and I'll change the color to a more silver color. Now let's make third place. So again, duplicate the second image label, rename it to third, and change the size to again a tiny bit smaller, 0.0840, 0.1570. The position 0.569, 0.1020, and I'm going to change the text label, and I'm going to change the text color to sort of a bronzish color. There we go. I'll also change the text to actually say third and not second, and we're done with the GUI. Now let's place this GUI inside our race system folder in replicated storage, just underneath the race GUI. Now we'll just be editing our race system script. So open that up and let's start coding. So we need to first get our win GUI. So under the race GUI variable, let's get win GUI equals race system, wait for child win GUI. And this will wait for the win GUI to exist. Alright, now we've got a bit of a long function to write, and this will be to spawn the winner GUI. So function, just under our spawn GUI, we'll create a new function called spawn winner GUI. And this will spawn the winner GUI inside of all the players. So first let's loop through each player in the game. So for underscore, comma player, in pairs, players, get players, do. Again, we don't need the index, so we can just use underscore because we're only going to be changing the player, only going to be using the player. So the first thing we need to do inside of each player is create a copy of the win GUI. So local GUI clone equals win GUI, clone. And this will just create a copy of the GUI. And now we need to get the player images. So if there's at least 3 finished players, so at least 3 players finish the race, we want to display all 3 first, second, and third place. If only 2 players win the race, then we don't need third place, so we only want to display first and second. And if only 1 person wins the race, we only want to display first, because otherwise second and third will both be empty. So we're going to need a series of if statements here. If hashtag finished players is greater than or equal to 3, then, so this means if the number of, so finished players is our finished players table. So if the number of items, if there's at least 3 items in this table, at least 3 players have finished the race, then we want to display first, second, and third. We can say GUI clone dot, not clones by the way, just clone dot first dot image equals. So getting our image now on our win GUI, our first place image, we're going to set this to players get user thumbnail async finished players 1. So the first finished player, dot user ID, comma, enum dot thumbnail type, dot avatar burst, comma, enum dot thumbnail size, dot size 420 by 420. And if I just put a drop down after that comma, there we go. So that's quite long. So what's this doing? Well, first of all, so we're setting something to this first place image. We're going to set the first user, so the first person to finish the race, we're going to set their thumbnail, their user's avatar. Avatar burst is sort of like a headshot. So it's a picture of their head, but it also includes a bit of the shoulders. We're setting the size as well. I use the largest size because it's the highest resolution. And obviously we have a fairly large, the size of our pictures aren't 420 by 420. But by doing 420 by 420, we know we're getting a decent resolution that is going to probably fit our GUI the best. Now we can copy this, drop down and paste it in, and change this from first to second, and this will be finished players 2. That's all we're doing is just changing that. So then we can do it one more time. So this will be third, and this will be finished players 3. So let's look at our first, second, and third images sorted. Now we can drop down again, backspace, and this will be an else if the number of finished players is 2. If we only have 2 finished players, we only want to change the first and second image. So I can copy these lines first, second, paste them in, and then we can destroy the third because we don't need it. So GUI clone dot third : destroy, and then we can just do an else if the number of finished players is 1, then we only need the first image, and then we can GUI clone dot second colon destroy and GUI clone dot third colon destroy. And now the last one we need is if the number of players is just 0. So we can just do an else. So if no players finish the race, we'll just destroy first, second, and third. So I'll copy these 2 lines. Just before it, I'll add GUI clone dot first colon destroy. You could add a text label, maybe, just saying no players finished the race. But I don't see the point in that, because the next race will begin after anyway. So we can just sort of forget about it. So I'm just going to destroy the first, second, and third if no one finishes the race. Now let's drop down and say GUI clone dot parent equals the player dot player GUI. So again, setting the GUI clone into, putting it into the player's GUI so they can see it. In fact, actually, what makes more sense, let me remove this else statement here. We'll just say if the number of finished players is equal to 0, we'll just destroy the entire GUI clone. That makes more sense than just destroying the first, second, third. We may as well destroy the whole thing. And that is that. That's our spawn winner GUI function. It looks complicated, but really, as long as you understand what this is doing, it's a lot easier than it looks. Now, just under our destroy GUI, I'm going to create a new function. And I'll name this destroy win GUI. And in here, again, we're going to loop through each player. If their player's GUI contains the win GUI, we'll just destroy it. So for underscore comma player, in pairs, players colon get children, do if player dot player GUI, spelled exactly like this, uppercase P, uppercase G, or it will not work, colon find first child, win GUI, spelled exactly how it is in your race system folder. Then player dot player GUI dot win GUI, again spelled exactly how you spell it in here, colon destroy. And that will destroy the win GUI from any players if they have the win GUI inside of them. That's what the find first child does. It checks to see if it exists within the player's player GUI. If it doesn't, it won't call this code. Now inside of our finish race bindable event function here, after we've put the race map back into server storage, we want to get the winners. So we can just call spawn winner GUI, and this will put the winner GUI inside every player. And now we need to reward the winners. So if the number of finished players is greater than or equal to 3, then we want to reward 3 players. So finished players 1, colon wait for child, leader stats. So we're going to wait for their leader stats to exist. So I'm rewarding the player's leader stats. More specifically, my leader stats script messy. I'm going to give them gems. Obviously, if you have a different currency system, this is going to look different to you. I am accessing gems, a value named gems inside the leader stats. If you have something named coins inside the player, not the leader stats, you need to access that. I can't tell you how to do this bit. This bit is unique to you. Once we've waited for the leader stats to exist, we're going to wait for child, and we're going to wait for the gems to exist. Dot value plus equals 500. And this will increase our gems by 500. Now let's increase the second player, and I think if you come in second place, you'll get 250 gems. And if you come in third place, I think it makes sense to give you 100 gems. And now I'll backspace and say else if the number of finished players is 2. Then we'll just reward the first 2 players. Else if the number of finished players is 1, then we'll just reward the player that finished 500 gems. And that's it for the finish race bindable event. That is completely finished now. Now one last thing we need to add. So after this if statement with the module timer being greater than 0, I'm going to add another if statement. If module.timer is less than or equal to 0, and module.inProgressTimer is less than or equal to 0, then, so if all the timers are at 0, so our time until the next race is at 0, and the time of the current race is at 0, so the race is completely finished, we're going to wait 5 seconds, and then call the destroy win GUI function. So this will display the win GUI for 5 seconds, and then destroy it, or remove it. So change this 5 to however long you want the win GUI to display for, but this is the amount of time that it's going to be displayed to the players. To test this, I'm going to set up a local server with 3 players to begin with. I'm going to have all 3 players finish the race, and then I'm going to do a test with 2 players finishing, a test with 1 player finishing, and then a test with no players finishing. Here we go. So I've joined the race with all 3 players. If I just run to the end, rather than running to the end on all 3, what I'm going to do is just use my server to drag the players over. So if I get this guy here, I don't want to drag him past the finish line or he won't teleport. I just want him to touch it. So if I put all the players just before the finish line, if you move them into the finish area, they won't teleport. I'm not sure if I accidentally moved him then or not. So I just want to put them all next to each other. So make sure you're doing this on the server and you can sort of drag the players to where you want them to be. Just here. Now if I walk, so the first player here, he crosses the line, he's first place. This guy crosses the line. Okay, so I did accidentally drag him into the finish area. So he's finished the race, but because I've dragged him into the finish area, he's not teleporting because I've basically moved him as he would have teleported. But this guy finishes as well. So don't worry about him. He has finished the race. Let's play close attention. We get the first, the second, the third. It doesn't. So the reason it doesn't show an image is because we are testing with players. These players here, these technically don't have avatars because they don't have real player IDs. They're just test players. So you won't get any images show. But we saw we got the 3 white boxes, which means that our winner GUI is displaying. And we can also see this guy got 500 gems. This guy got 200 and actually 100, I think. And this guy got the 250. Or it was 500, I can't remember, but we see all their gems have increased. I think this guy came last. He already had 100 gems to start with, I think. But we can see all the gems have increased correctly. So now I'm going to clean this up. And I'm just going to go to the Win GUI quickly and disable reset on spawn. That just means if the player dies, their GUI will still be showing. I'm now going to do a local server of 2 players. Just to show the gems a bit more clearly on this one as well, let's just pay attention. So the guy on the left's got 750 and the guy on the right's got 1,250. So I'm just going to run this one because I've got a good speed on both these players. Again, we are still going to have white boxes. We're not going to have actual player avatars because these are test players, but we should have only 2 race boxes, not 2 white boxes at the end, not 3. So I'll just run to the end. I'm going to avoid using the server because when I use the server, if I put them in the finish area, they don't teleport. Here goes to this first one's nearly at the end. There we are. And he teleports back. And now let's test this one. Here we go. So this time only 2 players finished. So we should get a GUI. It will show for about 5 seconds. It will say first and second. 2 white boxes. There won't be an avatar. But when we test with 1 player, there will be. There we go, first and second. So we know that's working. Now let's just test with 1 player. So I don't need to do a local server for this one. I can just do test and play. And this time we will get a player because we're testing with your actual avatar. This person actually exists. This has an actual ID, an actual player ID. So there will be, your avatar will show up. That's how you can test the avatars. If you want to test it with 2 or 3, then you will need to play this game with some of your friends in the actual Roblox player. Here we go. So get to the end quickly, teleport back. I'm pretty quick on this one. And now it still says race ending in. You can optionally choose to have this removed. You can destroy this. I'm not going to do that, but it's pretty easy. You just call the destroy GUI function. But I'm not going to worry about that too much because I like to know when the race is ending, even if I've already finished, because then we can see when we're going to get our reward. As you can see, I've got 20 gems here. I should go up to 520 gems once this is done, and my actual player avatar should appear. Should say first, and there should be no other white boxes. And as you can see here, if I die, because we've disabled the reset on spawn, the GUI is still there. I do get an error, but that's not related to this. That's related to my actual speed simulator. Just some code that I've written wrong. So don't worry about that. There we go. First place, and it shows my avatar. And I also get the 500 gems, and it disappears. That's it. Now let's just test it one more time with no players finishing the race. So I'm going to join the race, but not finish it. And this time, I'm just going to wait here behind the start line. I don't want to touch the finish area at all. Here we go. So we've got 3, 2, 1, and we die. You can add some code just to teleport the players back. Not too worried about that, but more importantly, none of the win GUI shows up. So that is good. We need to add a new timer. I'll call this one Intermission Timer and set it to 0 by default. This will be the time between races. So if we set this to 30 seconds in the function we're going to create, that means there'll be 30 seconds between each race. Just below our race in progress function, let's create a new function. This will be race module.intermission, and it's going to be the exact same as these ones here. So I'm just going to copy the code, paste it over. This will be race module.intermission timer. By default will be 30 seconds. That's what I'm going to set it to. So this means there'll be 30 seconds between each race. I'll change this to intermission timer. I'll change this to intermission timer. And we don't need to call any events here. Now we can close this module script. It's completely finished. We won't be adding any more functionality to it. Now inside our race system script, I'm going to add a function just below our update GUI timer. And this will be to start the race. So function start race. And in here, if we're not in the race, we want to start the timer. So let's start by resetting all of our tables. So at the start of each race, we want to have a fresh set of variables. So all our tables, the finished players, the not decided, etc. We want to reset all these back to default. So we're ready for the next race. So finished players is empty table. Not decided will be an empty table. GUI shown will go back to false. Because remember, we want GUI shown to be false in order to show the GUI. We want to say race map dot wall dot can collide equals true, and this will stop players from being able to move through the wall, so they're stuck at the start line. And then we will start the timer. Local start timer equals coroutine dot create module dot start timer. This will create a coroutine to call the start timer function while still running this script simultaneously. I'm going to say coroutine.resume start timer. We can now replace on lines 201, 202 for me. We can actually replace this with the start race function now, because we now have a way to to actually start a race in a function. So we may as well do that. Now in our finish race bindable event, after we've rewarded the winners, we want to start the intermission timer. So local intermission equals coroutine.create module.intermission, and then we can say coroutine.resume intermission. Now in our while wait one do, this is sort of the last bit of the code really. After we destroy the win GUI, we'll say if module.intermission timer, make sure you spell it exactly how it's spelled in your race module. You can copy and paste it over if that helps. Is less than or equal to 0. Then, so if the intermission timer is at 0, then we want to start the race, because that means the next race is ready to begin. Now we can close this and actually test it. I'm only going to test it with one player. There's no need to test it with loads for this one, luckily, because we only need to test that the race actually respawns. Here we go. So I'll hit join. We go 3, 2, 1, and now we can race. So we run to the end. We should go to 1020 gems. I've just fallen over. There we go. So at the end of the race, we'll get rewarded. I'll just wait for the timer to stop. Here we go. So I've got my winner displayed. There we go. I'm the winner. I got my 500 gems. And now the race has disappeared. Now it won't say anything, but then after 30 seconds, we should get prompted again to join the next race. So it's been a little while now. I'm not sure how long exactly. But if I just keep waiting over here, because I know the race starts over here, so if I just wait, eventually, there we go. So we get prompted again. It's been about 30 seconds, and then I can join or dismiss the next race. Perfect. A few more race maps. I'm not going to go too in detail with this because we've already covered creating the maps. I'll just grab our race map here out of server storage. I'm going to rename this folder to Race 1, just because we're going to have multiple maps now. So all I'm going to do is duplicate it. I'm going to make sure collisions under home here is turned off, because if it's turned on, when I duplicate it, it's going to go above it. I'm just going to duplicate this with collisions off, rename this to race 2. I can now drag our race 1 back into the race folder. And now I can design race 2. If you want to make race 2 from scratch, you can do that. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to quickly skim through this. So I'll just do a race 2. Make a very quick map. I'm just going to change the colors up, but the same obstacles. You can do it however you want. I'm going to do 3 races as well. I'll get back to you once I've done all 3 races. Here we go. So this is my race 2. I'm now going to duplicate this and rename the duplicated one to race 3. And what I'll do is drag the race 2 folder into our race folder under server storage. Now let me design race 3 and I'll get back to you once that's done. Here we go. Here's my race 3, more of like a wintry theme, and I'll drag that into the race folder as well. Now we've got 3 races in the race folder. Now let's finish our race system script. Where we've got race map, our variable here, we're going to change this. This will now become race maps. And this race maps, rather than waiting for the map to exist, we don't have a map under the race folder anymore. We now have a bunch of maps. So we'll just do race folder :get children. And this will get all these maps in the race folder and store them in this variable. Now we can see we've got a bunch of errors here. All these little red orangey squares are errors. So let's go down to the first one, which will be in our start race function. Because we don't have a race map anymore, we can't set the can collide to true. So we need a chosen map. So go back up to the top, and just below this module, I'm going to create another variable named chosen map. And by default, it will be set to nil. And this will be the map that has been chosen for the next race. So now, rather than race map, we can say chosen map.wall.canCollide equals true. Now I'm back up to the teleport player remote event. Again, changing our race map to chosen map. And that's all this really is just replacing race maps with chosen maps. Same in the start race, rather than race map, we'll do chosen map. And same with the finish race, we'll do chosen map instead of race map. Now this is where we're going to change quite a few bits, and this is where it will get a bit confusing. First is create a function to load the first race. Because our chosen map starts as being nil, we need to choose the first race. So function, load first race, and in here we're going to get a map index. So local chosen map index is going to be math.random. And we're going to pick a random number between 1 and the number of race maps. So hashtag race maps to get the number of race maps. So we have 3 maps stored in our race maps variable. So this will get a random number between 1 and 3. And we can use this to pick a map. Now let's actually load the race into the workspace. So race maps, open square brackets, chosen map index, close square brackets, dot parent equals workspace. And this will pick this random map. So race maps 1 is race 1, race maps 2 is race 2, race maps 3 is race 3. It goes alphabetically, so race map 2 might be race 3, but that doesn't matter too much because it's random anyway. And now we can say chosen map equals race maps, chosen map index, and then we can call the start race function. Now just below here we can call load first race. And just below this race map.finish area.touched, we can remove the start race call now. Because we don't want to start the race there. We want to load the first race and then we start the race. Now I'm going to go to our while wait 1 do loop. And we're going to make a few changes here. We can no longer do if race map.parent is race folder to check if the map has been loaded, if the race has been loaded or not. We actually have to check if the number of children in the race is equal to the number of race maps. If a race is in the workspace, then the number of children here, it should be 3, but the number of children will be 2 because one of the maps is in the workspace. So if the number of maps in the race folder is not equal to the number of maps there should be in the race folder, then we know one race is in the workspace, so there's a race in progress. So we can say, replace this if statement with if number of server storage dot race :get children, so hashtag server storage dot race :get children is equal to the number of race maps. Then if this is true, we want to pick a random map. Local chosen map index is math.random between 1 and the number of race maps. Race maps chosen map index dot parent equals workspace, and then chosen map equals race maps chosen map index. And we've done this exact same code up here in the load first race function. So we could make this its own function, but there's not much point. In fact, actually, let's do exactly that. Go to our load first race function, cut that out. Just above it, create function random map and paste it in. And now we can call the random map function and then we can start the race. Again, under here, we can, rather than doing all this, we can just call random map. Now I'm going to copy all of our race map.finishedarea.touched event here, copy all of it and then delete it. Make sure you've copied it. Now under the else in our if module.timer is greater than 0, so if the race is in progress. Then while we're updating our GUI timer, just below that, paste this in. So we now have a touched event in our while wait 1 do loop. Now, while this may not seem too efficient, you've got to remember we're only checking this every second. So we're only going to be checking if they're touching it every second. So it's not the end of the world in terms of efficiency. If this was a while wait do, there was no 1 in here, we'd be doing this very often. We'd be doing this, you know, multiple times per second. This won't be very efficient. But because we're only doing it once per second, it doesn't really matter too much. Rather than race map, we'll do chosen map. And then the rest is the exact same. And that is it. So the reason we've got to check if they're touching the finish area in the while wait do is because we can't detect the finish area of the chosen map when the chosen map changes. Because this won't change. This is sort of permanently stored in a way to whatever the original chosen map is, which is 0. So we have to constantly update this. If that makes sense. It's a bit confusing, but we have to check if they're touching the finish area on the chosen map, not the original map. We can now close the race system. We are now finished. All that's left to do now is test it. So hit test and play. I'm just going to test it with 1 player because there's not too much point in testing it with a local server because we've already done that. Let's hit join, and it's picked our random map here. That's perfect. What I'll do, I'll just do 1 more race after this, and hopefully we'll get a different map, just to show you it is picking a different map each time, and to show you that this is working correctly. Let me just close this side panel up a little bit. There we go, 3, 2, 1, and now we're running to the end. The race is ending in 60 seconds. Touch the finish area, we get teleported back correctly. And now I'll just wait for this race to end, wait for our winner pop-up to appear, and then I'll wait for the next race to start, and hopefully we get a different map. You may get the same map again. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. Again, this is random. At the end of the day, you have a 33% chance of getting each map. If you have 3 maps, I'm assuming. You can have more, you can have just less, you can have just 1 if you want. But you can have 20 maps if you'd like. It's up to you. But let's assume you have 3. You've got a 33% chance of getting 1 map. You can get the same 2 maps in the row. That is perfectly possible. The chance of getting 2 maps in a row, obviously it gets slimmer the more maps. If you know, your chance of getting 5 of the same map is very slim. There we go. So the map disappears and I've come first. Hopefully we get a new map next time. If not, I'll just wait for the next one after that. Okay, so it must have nearly been around 30 seconds. Just waiting for it to appear. Hopefully it should be any second now. There we go. Oh, it is the same map again. Okay, that is unfortunate. Ignore that error. That's not related to the race system. So I'm just going to dismiss this one and I'll wait for the next one again, and I will get back to you once the next map arrives. Okay, so that map has gone now. So we should, after about 30 seconds, the next map should spawn. So it's been about 20 seconds-ish. I've not really been keeping track, but hopefully in a second, this next map will spawn. So I just want to keep an eye on it. Any second now. I want to keep talking through this. There we go. And we have now got a different map. There we go. Now I can join this one and we can do the next race, which I'll just show you the whole race works. As you'll see now, it works absolutely fine. Counts down 1 second. Finish the race like normal. You now have a fully functional race system in your Roblox game. If this helped you out, please make sure you subscribe and turn notifications on so you never miss an upload. Please consider joining our Discord server. The link is in the description, where we're trying to build a community of future developers. You can ask for programming help, help others, or just chat there too. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.